The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee will come to order. Would the clerk please take attendance?
Chair Outman.
Here.
Representatives Alexander.
Here.
Kara.
Here.
Bruck. Kuhn.
Present.
Nyer.
Here.
Preston.
Here.
Bonak.
Here.
Frisbee.
Here.
Wertz.
Here.
Hersberg.
Here.
Hope. Here. Colazar.
Here.
Andrews.
Here.
Grant. Miller.
Here.
Wilson. Mr. Chair, you have 14 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Nyer moves to adopt the minutes of the June 3rd meeting. There being no objection, the minutes are adopted. First on the agenda today is voting on House Bill 4415 from a couple of weeks ago. Just a reminder to voters, we did adopt the H1 sub before testimony on the bill. I'm going to read in a quick card. Not wishing to speak, supporting the bill, Samantha Gibson, Michigan Association of Counties. Vice Chair Alexander moves to report House Bill 4415 with recommendation as substitute H1. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Outman.
Yes.
Representatives Alexander.
Yes.
Kara.
Yes.
Bruck. Kuntz.
Yes.
Nyer.
Yes.
Preston.
Yes.
Bonak.
Yes.
Frisbee.
Yes.
Wertz.
Yes.
Hersberg.
Yes.
Hope.
Yes.
Colazar.
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Grant. Miller.
Yes.
Wilson. Mr. Chair, you have 14 yeas, 0 nays, and 0 pass. The motion prevails.
House Bill 4415 is reported with recommendation as substitute H1. We're going to be moving into some presentations on vehicle miles traveled concept, VMT. Just some informational hearings. Nobody get their panties in a bunch. We just wanted to kickstart the conversation. With that, we're going to be hearing a presentation from Burak Feigenbaum, from the Senior Managing Director of Transportation Policy at the Reason Foundation. Sir, whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you very much, Chair Outman, and also Vice Chair Alexander, Hersberg, and all the members of the committee. So yeah, this presentation is going to be an overview of mileage-based user fees and the pros and cons. My name is Burak Feigenbaum. I'm the Senior Managing Director of Transportation Policy at Reason Foundation. We are a think tank, a nonprofit. We don't stand to make any money off of this idea or off of this concept. Our sole purpose is education and trying to get better governance and better policy. And so those principles are what guide our research and what guides what I'll be talking about today. So let's see. I want to move on, and I don't know if you guys can see if you have the presentation in front of you, but move on to the next slide that says presentation summary, where I talk a little bit about the overview of the presentation. There's going to be some short and long-term revenue sources, and I want to discuss the differences and why that's important, why an alternative revenue source is needed, some other funding options for highways, the concerns that we've heard with this mileage-based user fee or other names for it, road usage charge, vehicle miles traveled. There are lots of names. They're all the same basic thing. How a state pilot would work and how that would be conducted. And so in terms of short-term fixes, I want to really stress that transportation funding in Michigan and throughout the country has operated on what we call a users pay, users benefit principle. And with that, folks who use the roads pay more, and folks who use the roads less pay less. Folks who don't use the roads, don't drive at all, don't pay anything. And there's 5 advantages, I should say, to this principle. And they are fairness, proportionality, self-limiting, predictability, and investment signal, things that we don't see in other transportation funding options. And so I know that the House has passed a number of bills this session, including 4183 and 4180, which dedicate the sales tax on fuel to highways, which I think is important and really strengthens the user's pay principle. Finding that additional revenue, I know there's a total estimate of about $3.1 billion is really important. But I want to stress that this is a medium-term solution. A similar state in terms of population and geographic area, Georgia, did something similar to this back in 2016, where they dedicated the fuel tax to dedicated sales tax on fuel, to transportation and some other miscellaneous user fees, and came up with more than $1 billion at that point in time. But fast forward to today, And the Georgia Department of Transportation noted that in its 2050 long-range transportation plan, the state has $81 billion of work and only $26 billion to pay for it, which is obviously not a good thing. So I want to make sure that Michigan has not just a short term, but also a long term solution to this transportation funding problem. And so, is the long term solution higher fuel taxes? And the answer is we don't think so. The fuel tax has been the largest funding mechanism for Michigan's highways for a number of years. It's been around for more than 100. But the problem is because of the increase in fuel efficiency of conventional vehicles, the growth in electric vehicles, and the growth in hybrids, it's just not a realistic funding mechanism going forward. I like to say the fuel tax is like a rock star on his farewell tour. We keep saying, well, this is going to be it. We're going to find a solution. We're going to find a solution. We're going to find a solution. And we're to the point now where the rock star has done 3 or 4 farewell tours, and we actually need to come up with something. And I would note that over the last 30 years, the fuel tax has lost about 50% of its purchasing power overall due to a number of factors, including inflation and not indexing it. So there have been a number of different organizations that have looked at different funding options. I picked some of the best or maybe most realistic, I should say. Some folks say, well, why don't we just do more general funding? And the answer is because the general fund is not reliable, it's not dedicated, transportation has to compete against other priorities, and it's not really clear that transportation would win against those priorities. Folks have said, well, what about a sales tax? And again, a sales tax has to compete with other areas. It's not reliable, especially in economic downturns. We saw during the COVID period that there were a lot of places that relied on sales tax that had trouble with sustainable revenue because of that. Folks have looked at tire taxes. They've looked at weight distance fees on trucks. They've suggested another state such as Ohio to pay for it. I will say I was speaking with some folks in Ohio a couple weeks ago, and they were not real excited about paying for Michigan's transportation needs. They were having trouble paying for their own. And tolling, which I want to stress is a good option for limited access highways, interstates, and other freeways. And there is some tolling work going on here. Indiana passed legislation to toll its interstates. Michigan obviously had a study that HNTB did looking at tolling. Cavenue is doing some work on the I-95 corridor, looking at some different types of pricing. But tolling by itself is not going to work because local streets can't be tolled. Roads with traffic signals tolling is a challenge. And so we need something that can work on all streets in all places. And so that's what got us to mileage-based user fees. And so, as I mentioned, mileage-based user fees have many names because in the transportation world, we're not very good at branding. So we also call them road usage charges or road charges or vehicle mile traveled fees. We recommend them for all vehicles, not just electrics or hybrid vehicles. Generally, the state rate, and this is flexible depending on what the gas tax is, but 2 cents to 2.5 cents, maybe even 3 cents per mile now. And that does not include the federal fuel tax. That would just be a state equivalent mileage-based user fees. And then heavy duty trucks, tractor trailers would pay a higher rate because they wear out the highways much more than automobiles do due to their weights and due to the axle weights, which just determines a lot of that. And so I want to stress that this is not some new idea. It's actually been studied by a number of other places, going back to 2005 when the first National Commission on Mileage-Based User Fees examined the concept. More than 30 states have done some type of pilot. Two multi-state coalitions, the Eastern Transportation Coalition and Ruck America, which is primarily Western states, have also examined pilots. And there's now 5 states with permanent mileage-based user fee programs: Hawaii, Oregon, Utah, Vermont, and Virginia. And we believe there will be at least 2 more within the next year based on action that's going on in various state houses. And I want to stress that when people hear mileage-based user fees, they get concerned because they think this is some type of big brother tracking approach. And there's a number of different ways to do mileage-based user fees. There is a high-tech option where the device plugs into the vehicle's OBD2 port and collects the when and the where of highway use. And there are advantages to that, which I'll get to in a little bit. But there's also a medium option where you have a device, but it's only collecting the miles. It's not looking at the location or the time. And then a low tech option, such as an odometer reading, which can be done with a photo, other types of verification at a mechanic through various inspections that requires very little in the way of new technology and little in the way of new costs. And new ideas that are coming on every year, vehicle telematics. There's sort of some discussions with the automakers right now who are have got some concerns about that. So that's obviously got to get worked out, as well as a prepaid mileage system and a cell phone app. So there's lots of different collection choices. So when we talk about mileage-based user fee concerns, I alluded just a minute ago to the privacy, which is that the mileage-based user fees can be used to monitor my location. And the reality is, mileage-based user fees that use GPS are using a one-way collection device. The GPS by itself cannot actually track anything. It needs to be paired with a secondary device. And so just having a GPS in your vehicle isn't going to lead to those type of concerns. Now, there are others that would lead to those type of concerns, but a GPS by itself would not. We hear a lot from rural residents who are concerned that because they drive more miles than folks in urban areas, they're going to pay more. And it's actually the reverse. And the reason is because rural residents in general tend to have less fuel efficient vehicles, so a higher share of trucks and older vehicles. And they are right now being penalized with the fuel tax just because they have a less fuel efficient vehicle. They're paying more to go an equivalent distance because of that. And so they would actually stand to benefit significantly, we found, under this system. And this has been across the country in every state that's done a pilot. There are also equity concerns, whether this is unfair to lower income residents with older vehicles and not so much unfair to older vehicles as I referenced before. I would also point out that some of the lowest income residents in Michigan don't actually drive at all. And so they're not going to be paying for this at all. So that's a pretty good solution if you're talking about equity concerns in terms of folks who are not driving are not paying. Other concerns we have are double taxation. I want to stress that mileage-based user fees are a replacement, not a supplement to the fuel tax. In the pilot, we would recommend that the fuel tax or type of revenue would be refunded. Every state that has implemented a mileage-based user fee so far has done it as a replacement, not as a supplement. Cost of collection, which can initially be higher than the fuel tax. The fuel tax is pretty cheap to collect, usually about 2 to 3%. But we found that mileage-based user fees can decrease quickly with scale. I would also say that it's important when you're working with your vendors to choose vendors that are giving the state a good deal. There's a lot more competition in vendors now than there was a few years ago, and so it's possible to get collection costs down that way. And then multiple funding options. And this is just making sure that when we're trying new technology, we have as many different options available as possible. Obviously, right now, there'll be some people on a mileage-based user fee, and there will be some people on a fuel tax, and so that will be an interesting test. The important thing is that you don't have anyone that's on both of them. So I like to bring up my slide here with my four people in various states of something here to talk about who should be interested in a mileage-based user fee state pilot. And the answer is, if you think mileage-based user fees are the best thing since sliced bread, you think this is the best thing the transportation community has ever come up with, and it's blowing your mind, then this is for you. Because the pilot is going to show that this is a good idea, this is something that's feasible, and this is something that Michigan can do. On the other hand, if you think mileage-based user fees are the worst idea that anyone's ever come up with, and you don't know what these academics that are wasting their time every day writing silly reports are dreaming of, then you should support this pilot because it's going to show that mileage-based user fees are a bad idea. That's why we do pilots, is to see whether things work. That's why they're important. I will say that I've heard, speaking with some folks and being fortunate enough to speak with some leaders in Michigan, that there seems to be a consensus developing that this pilot is important across the political spectrum. folks in all levels of Michigan government. You know, I think it's pretty rare to have bipartisan consensus right now on just about anything. And I say this as someone who lives in Northern Virginia and sees just how little bipartisan consensus there is at the federal level. And so I think while we have it, it's important to take this opportunity and test out what we have. I want to spend my last a few slides here talking a little bit about the type of questions that a state pilot would answer. And so it would be things such as, how would a mileage-based user fee pilot work in Michigan? How would they work? How would they be different? So there's similarities and differences, and I want to give an example here. In the state of Hawaii, which is obviously a very unique place, they were looking at rental cars because a lot of people come into Hawaii, they rent cars. Obviously, not a lot of people driving in from neighboring states. And so Michigan has certain circumstances in terms of traffic with Canada, in terms of port traffic, in terms of people going between the upper and lower peninsula. Uh, those are the type of questions that a Michigan pilot can help answer. Looking at different collection mechanisms, looking at the day-to-day driving, rural, urban, we already talked about, privacy, we talked about fuel tax refund, multi-state travel, I just mentioned, less in Michigan than in other states, but obviously some with Ohio and Indiana and Wisconsin. And then transitioning from a pilot to a permanent program, that's become a pretty big topic of conversation now, just because some states are choosing to roll their pilots into a permanent program. I had some discussions with Georgia a month ago about just how they would do that. That's something that they're looking at. Generally, I think a good pilot, we're looking at about $6.9 million based on some back of the envelope calculations. I think it's helpful to include some type of technical advisory committee. Uh, Could be, and these are just people that I came up with, so do not hold me to this, but the director of MDOT, some highway users, folks concerned with privacy, members of the House and the Senate, some folks who represent rural interests, just to go ahead and guide the pilot. And the idea is that these folks would serve, they wouldn't meet that often, but they would help guide the process and make sure that all concerns in the state are being taken care of. And in addition to the what we mentioned before, they might look at issues such as ease of collecting data, law enforcement, some of these other issues that can be important. I also think it's important that when you're determining you're coming up with who you're partnering with, you partner with multiple vendors. I know I mentioned that before, but I think working with multiple vendors can help reduce your costs. Obviously, we would want any participation to be voluntary. We would want there to be refunds. We want to minimize any personal information that needs to be collected. And at the end of the day, it's going to be important to have a report that goes to the elected officials in the state to say how this pilot worked. What did we learn? What did we not learn? What do we need to know going forward? Is this a good idea for the state? Do we want to do a permanent program? Those type of concerns. So let me go ahead and stop there. I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present today.
All right. Well, thank you, Baruch. I really appreciate your presentation. I'll start off with a couple of questions. I'll start out with multi-state travel. So, from a policy and economic perspective, how significant is the free rider problem presented by out-of-state drivers under a VMT system without some sort of interstate compact between all the various states in the nation? Right now, it's really easy for us to collect the tax revenue from out-of-state drivers. They come in, they fill up their vehicle, we capture the gas tax. Short of an interstate compact under a VMT method of taxation, how would we remedy that concern?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So right now, the out-of-state travel is not really a concern because those folks would still be paying the fuel tax. But moving forward, there would need to be some type of compact. It could be through the DMVs. We see some of that in the tolling as well in the tolling industry through tolling agencies. But there would need to be some type of agreement among the various states to make sure that there isn't a free rider and people are paying what they should be paying. We want Michigan to be getting the revenue that's actually driven in Michigan, Ohio to be getting what's driven in Ohio, et cetera, et cetera. So it is something they're working on.
Okay. Yeah, because that's just a major concern of mine, and one that hasn't really been answered aside from establishing again some sort of interstate compact. In terms of time frame, how quickly do you think that could be established if Michigan, if these other states went ahead and implemented this system?
I think it's something that could be implemented in a couple years. By the time this was implemented on a permanent basis. I know the Eastern Transportation Coalition has a system among the states on the East Coast, since many of them are pretty small, that go ahead and share data.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really just a matter of getting the organizations together and getting it done. But the technical ability to do it is there right now.
Okay.
It's just a matter about getting the legislation passed.
Sure. And you mentioned there's already an Eastern Coalition of states right now. How many states are participating in that?
Right. It's about, I want to say about 15 states. Not all the members of the Eastern Transportation Coalition has, I want to say, like 20 states, and they're not all participating, but a number of the ones in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic have this sort of sharing reciprocity where they're working together.
Okay. Very good. And I'll ask one further quick question. Let's talk about lessons from other states and their pilot programs. As you alluded to this, several states have conducted a VMT pilot program. What are the most important lessons Michigan can learn from these experiences, both in terms of successful strategies and maybe some of the challenges to avoid as well?
Yeah, I think the most important lessons are one, when you're contracting with the vendor, make sure that you're doing it with a competitive bid, like you would do in any other thing. When some of these pilots started 5, 10 years ago, there was only one or two vendors, and they charged extremely high costs, and that's not something that is a good plan. And so that would be number one. I would say number two is make sure you sample residents across the state. So, from Metro Detroit to the Upper Peninsula, it's really important to get good geographic samples because then people understand how it works for better or worse and are more likely to, buy into the technology if it works. And then the third one is offer choices. It's really important to have a high tech, a medium tech, and a low tech. Some people really like that GPS option because it gives some vehicle health. There's some other advantages to driving that it actually gives in terms of tracking how you're driving, which some people really like, some people really don't like. Then there's others who are less familiar or less comfortable with the high tech and want that lower tech option. So giving those three choices is really important.
Any other challenges that states have faced with their pilot programs?
I think the biggest challenge that states have faced is one, try to do it on too compressed a time frame. So they maybe try to do a pilot in 6 months where it just wasn't feasible in terms of getting it stood up and getting results. And I think another challenge that states have faced is trying to focus too much on one specific issue. So if the concern was just electric vehicles, they would do a pilot for electric vehicles only, and they wouldn't take into effect the significance of revenue loss from conventional vehicles. And so their pilot for electric vehicles may have been fine, but it didn't really solve the underlying problems that they were looking to solve.
Sure, that makes sense. Hang tight, Baruch. We got some questions from other members. We'll start with Representative Kuhn.
Mr. Chair, I have nothing bunched. May the record show. Mr. Feinbaum, thank you for being here today. My concern is the cost of collection. If we assume 15,000 miles a year, 30 miles a gallon, 500 gallons of fuel, in Michigan, again, rough numbers, an average passenger vehicle is paying $250 a year in road tax. My concern is how do we collect the mileage? I come from an IFTA background, and it was $20 a month to run GPS in my vehicles. Well, collection alone, before we add the FTE at the Treasury, eats up all the revenue. So I think we end up at a road usage charge at some point in the future, but have you done any, my question, thank you, Mr. Chair, very patient. My question is the cost of collection. Have we done any studies on what it's going to cost to collect the data and how much of the revenue is that going to take up?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and it's a bit of a challenge because the fuel tax is so cheap to collect, right? And the honest truth is, we say fuel tax 2 to 3% because we find some evasion in agriculture and other things. I think best case scenario here is 5%. And so 5% is not 2.5%. I do think we can get there through simpler methods, whether that's using the car's onboard system, whether that's a simple odometer reading at a repair shop when you bring your car in. I think there's some different options there. What we've seen now is we've seen costs in the range of 5 to 10%. Some of that is because they're small programs that need to be scaled. I think when the programs are scaled, it will be more realistic to get down to 5%. But I can't say there's one silver bullet right now. And I can't say we'll ever get to the fuel tax. We'll just get closer to the fuel tax. The fuel tax is not really a realistic option going forward. So it's not a great comparison, but it's still what we're striving for.
And our Eastern Seaboard that's doing this now, they're in that sub 5% collection costs?
They're in the 5 to 10%. Yeah, I don't think anyone has gotten below about 7 to 8% right now.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Anders.
Thank you, Chair. Kind of I think a derivative question off of what Representative Kuhn's just asked, but my concern is you get to the end of the year or whenever this would be collected, and let's say $250 is the number. My concern is that for most people, as they're driving throughout the year, they're paying this tax kind of as they go, nickels and dimes at a time. It adds up over the course of the year to $250. But when you get to, tax time, most people are looking for a refund, not to pay extra money. And I think my concern is that human behavior-wise, I worry that low income and really probably even some middle income families who are living a little closer paycheck to paycheck, this is kind of a hard to predict number that they're going to get hit with at the end of the year, I think, for a lot of people, or, whenever the collection date is. And I think my concern, maybe you can address in some way, is what happens in those cases, right, where you get to that point and somebody just doesn't have the money, right? Like they just can't pay $300 out of pocket when it's time to collect because they just weren't thinking about it. Where gas tax, they're paying for it all year.
Yeah, and that's an excellent question, and I'm glad you brought it up. And what many of the pilots have done is they have given different payment options. So you can pay once at the end of the year, or you can also pay quarterly, or you can pay monthly in order to give a smaller bill. There's also some programs that states have experimented with where you can prepay and you get a certain number of mileage. If that's a concern, I know there's some folks who are unbanked or underbanked and might prefer to prepay than have a credit card on file. But yeah, that's a great concern that you've identified, and giving folks the choice is important, and many programs have done that.
Representative Preston.
Thank you, Chair. Any indication on what trajectory the feds have been taking with their excise taxes? There have been discussions on that because, with the interstate issues and across state lines, I see this as, providential as to where we're going to end up ultimately, and the only way forward with, different collection paths and a variety of options for the consumer. But I think all the states kind of doing it, not so coordinated, but, more of a national push towards this is going to make this much less bumpy. Where are the feds at on their excise tax?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I don't necessarily have the most positive news, but here's where it is. So like many states, the feds have a problem with the fuel tax and the fact that they've been dumping a lot of general fund revenue into it. And so for the next surface transportation reauthorization, which is coming up next year, there's a multi-billion-dollar, I don't even know where it is, multi-billion-dollar hole, and the question is what to do with it. So there is also a federal mileage-based user fee program, which is being rolled out at a turtle's speed right now. And so it was passed in a passed surface transportation reauthorization bill. Members of the committee have been named, but it's going very slowly and it's being studied. And so the federal government has just as much of a problem, maybe even a bigger problem than the states do. And there is a consensus that they need to do something. And there seems to be a consensus, at least, there was in Congress, bipartisan at this last transportation bill, that this was the most promising option. But everything in Washington takes 5 times longer than it does at the state level. So I think we will get there in Washington to the same place, but I think states are going to need to take the lead because I don't see Washington take the lead, certainly in the current political environment.
Yeah, it's a great question. I was wondering the same. It does seem like the federal government has been reluctant to do anything regarding this. We will now go to Representative Miller.
Thank you for your presentation. And as you said, states are seeing a decline in gas tax revenue. Could this be done just on EVs? And how would you address rural drivers? They drive further, so how would that be fair? How could that be addressed? And then you're talking about data tracking, and right away the public will be resistant to hearing that the government's looking at you again and tracking your movements. So how are other states addressing that? And what if you're just addressing EVs, how do you do that with other vehicles as well that are in commercial use? Could that be done?
All right. Well, that's a four-parter, so
Yeah.
you may have to remind me at the end there. I don't know if I can remember those, but I'm going to try. So in terms of EVs, we don't recommend it just for EVs simply because the number of EVs on the road in Michigan is pretty small. And so EVs should be paying, and they should be paying at the same rate as what everyone else is paying, but that by itself is not going to solve the problem. The problem in terms of declining revenue is caused by the fact that a Ford F-150 today gets, let's say 20 miles per gallon, whereas 20 years ago it got 15 miles per gallon. And there's a lot of Ford F-150s, far more than the number of electric vehicles combined on the roadway. And so that is leading to the shortfall in revenue. And so we've really got to address it for all vehicles. In terms of the privacy issues, yeah, and I mean this is candidly where folks who are maybe a little better at communication than me are maybe a little bit better at branding as well. I guess what I would say is that we see some folks who are early adopters of technology who don't mind privacy. They might be younger, they may have grown up with smartphones, and they just view it differently than many of us would. And they are happy to have this higher tech option. For folks who are concerned about that, I think that's why it's important to offer the lower tech and the medium tech option that don't have those privacy concerns. And I think it's important for the leaders of the pilot to explain that there's trade-offs here. If you want these advanced, technologies, if you want vehicle health, if you want, GPS, whatever, you can have them, but you've got a system that maybe has a little bit more knowledge on you. Whereas if that's something that you're concerned about, we have these other options that don't have that. I think explaining it along those lines and giving folks a choice, as well as explaining what the GPS system can and can't do, is really critical. And I think there was one more part of the question that I admit I've now.
Well, it was about rural drivers and also the public concern. How can we get the public to support this?
Yeah. So in terms of rural drivers, we have found in other states that because rural drivers pay less with this mileage-based user fee than the fuel tax, they are actually happy with it. They are paying per mile, and to the extent that they're driving more miles, you could argue that they're paying more than maybe a more urban driver. On the other hand, I would say that they're using more roadway. So in some ways that's fair because we want people to be paying for the roadway they're using. But because right now they are so penalized, honestly, with the fuel tax, they are happy to see a mileage-based user fee because they see significant savings in their pocket, more than anyone else. Rural saves significantly, suburban pays somewhat more, urban's about even. And that's what we found when we looked at the pilot. And then in terms of the communicating, I think it comes down to how we would communicate the importance of transportation in general. This is a system that gets you from your home to work every day. This is how you're able to, do activities. You want to go to a sporting event. You want to go to a concert. You want to go out to eat. You need a transportation system. All of the goods that are transported to your house, we need a transportation system. And we need a sustainable way to pay for this. And right now we don't have it. So if we keep on going down this same road with the gas tax, we're going to have a point in time where we can't pay for the roads you need. We can't pave them. We can't widen roads that are necessary. There's going to be safety concerns that we can't address. And that's just not a sustainable way forward. And so we need to go ahead and make a change. And we think this is the most promising option that we've seen. That would be how I would recommend it.
Thank you. I
Okay,
think-
Baruch, we're going to end it right there, just due to some time constraints. We do have a couple of questions that we weren't able to get to, but we thank you, sir, for your presentation, and we hope you'll come back again. We're going to move on now to Dr. Agarwal and Tom Gustafson of GeoToll. Gentlemen, please proceed to the table and begin whenever you're ready.
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon, Chairman Outman and honorable member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. My name is Ankur Agarwal, and I'm the CEO of GeoToll. GeoToll is a specialized in road usage charge and GPS-based tolling, transportation audit, transportation safety company. GeoToll has done several pilot programs with the state of Minnesota, Kansas, New Jersey, Maryland. GeoToll has also deployed its full program with the state of Oregon and is one of the commercial account manager, as well as Oregon's recently awarded Oregon account manager for the program. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the entire committee for giving me an opportunity to share my expertise and experience related to the road usage charge program. And also, I would like to commend the recent efforts by the committee for passing the recent legislation related to the transportation funding, and it really shows the seriousness of the committee and its commitment towards the infrastructure for today. But that is infrastructure for today. And as we know, and as my predecessor from Reason Foundation explained, that gas tax is a dwindling tax, there will be a shortfall in the coming time, but we have to be thinking about it. And it is not just about the EVs, it is about the EVs, the hybrids, and the high combustion gasoline vehicles that contribute towards this dwindling gas tax revenue collection. So from that perspective of the road usage charge, there are four basic mileage options which are there as part of the program. And again, those mileage reporting options are high-tech mileage reporting options and low-tech. Or in second different category, you can classify them as GPS-based options and non-GPS-based option. To give a little bit more in-depth analysis of that is kind of a non-GPS-based option could be a simple odometer capture. So user downloads a mobile app, and you take a picture of your dashboard of the vehicle, and it's like taking a selfie, and the picture gets automatically uploaded. There is a very complex engineering behind it, but it is all hidden from the user completely. And all of that magic happens right at the back end, where the mileage are already extracted from that. The vehicle is automatically identified from which vehicle this picture or this image is coming from. So all of those complex engineering is completely hidden from the user, and user has a very clean experience of just taking a single click and submitting that image, and you can construct the mileage messages out of it. In the high-tech version, GeoToll is one of the company which has a couple of integrations with the original equipment manufacturer or the car manufacturers. For example, we are integrated with Stellantis, we are integrated with Tesla. Now we are in process of integrating with Hyundai and other car manufacturer. Every vehicle which was manufactured on an average after 2020 has a small telematics computer already present in the vehicle. And that telematics computer is already sending your vehicle data to the OEMs. Based on the consumer consent, the consumer consents and provides that you can only extract out the odometer information from the OEM's computer system. So OEM on a frequency which is defined by the program, such as monthly or quarterly, reports their mileage information back to our system, and then the mileage information is then again converted into the consumer statement. Now onto the GPS-based system, GeoToll has developed a very unique system where even with the GPS, we are able to completely maintain the privacy of the users. For instance, in the GeoToll's mobile application, we are able to send the overlays onto the mobile application. Mobile being a mini computer, it has a two-way communication. So we are able to send that overlay onto the mobile phone. As the consumers are driving, based on the overlays, the miles are extracted based on the GPS logs, and then the GPS logs are completely removed from the user's device automatically. Now, that fully protects the consumer's privacy because we are not interested in where the user drove. We are just interested in the miles extracted from that, and the mileage messages can be constructed from that. So privacy issues were there in the earlier times, but with the recent technology that has been rolled out, the privacy concerns have been completely addressed and they have been eliminated from this road usage charge perspective. The second very common misconception related to road usage charge program is the double taxation, that somehow the person who's driving a combustion engine vehicle or a hybrid engine is already paying at the pump and they are going to be paying twice. No, this is not correct. When you enter, a participant enters the VIN gets decoded from the system. The decoder tells us what is the rating of this vehicle, which is the MPG rating. So let's say a vehicle which has driven 1,000 miles and had an MPG rating of 25 miles per gallon, they have already filled up 20 gallons of gas. So whatever gallons of the gas that they have filled up, the consumer gets a credit on their statement. So they are never overpaying, or they are never paying twice for that. So only a differential into the road usage charge and minus the gas tax you have already paid, which becomes a net truck charge, is automatically paid. One of the very good question came up in the last session from the committee, is that the consumer may have a problem in having this burden of the payment at the end of the year. Well, there are 3 live programs with Oregon, Virginia, and Utah, and 2 more live programs which are about to go with the state of Hawaii and Vermont. And most of these states, they have a flexibility of implementing the monthly charge. In the monthly charge, you have a payment processing method where you can do a prepay process or the postpay process. The consumer is automatically paying in form of a small bill of $15 or $20, depending upon the RUC charge associated with the state. Now, for all of these things, I sincerely request the committee to consider doing a pilot. A pilot is a key to getting the right information for developing a right policy for rolling out. The pilot should be a good representation of rural versus urban population, so that you can collect the feedback from all different kind of population demographics. At the same time, pilot is able to answer a lot of other questions in addition to the addressing the privacy concerns, how concerned they were on the privacy. We know that privacy is not the concern, but it becomes a part of the continuous education to the participant that your privacy concerns have been addressed by the technology. The second thing is the user experience that you want to collect. You want to see the ease of the enrollment into the program. You want to look into the way of customer service or the operational need of the program. So these are going to be one of the very, very important additional questions that you can get answered through the help of the pilot, and that would allow you to formulate a good policy. Then finally comes up as a question related to the program overhead. Gas tax is one of the most efficient way of implementing the program. When we say gas tax is implemented 3%, it is not exactly 3% because we do not count that the credit card fees that the consumer pay at the pump just for charging a regular credit card swipe, which is baked into the current gas. So it is a little bit more than 3%, but road usage charge, the technology is evolving very, very fast from that perspective, and with the right amount of the number of participant growth, the technology overhead can be drastically brought down. One of the sincere requests would be when you consider for a full program from that perspective, think about the technology which are most cost efficient to be implemented, and then at a later time, the new and high-tech technology catches up with the time, and it becomes much less expensive to implement it, and that's how you are able to control the cost of the overall program. Finally, when you're considering a pilot program, it's important to provide a wide variety of the choices to the consumer for the mileage reporting options, all 4 mileage reporting options, so that you can get the feedback for each of the mileage reporting options, get the consumer consent, their feedback that which mileage reporting options they liked, and it is about providing the choices to the consumer so that they can be part of the well done program by the state. So thank you so much. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name's Tom Gustafson. I'm the Chief Strategy Office for GeoToll. I was retired from a number of different previous jobs about 3 years ago and 4 years ago. An anchor came to me and said, would you join me at GeoToll? Here's what we're doing. And I did. And what I learned, particularly over the last year, if you're looking for a evolving technology that improves over time, that's what GeoToll does, and they do it well. And whether it's a pilot or the ultimate implementation, what you want to do is bring to the table all the options available to you, get a good sense of what the public wants and will tolerate based upon the pilot, and then a year or so later begin to think about how to implement so that you still have your gas tax, but now you have a RUC that'll help you collect from other drivers that don't really pay much gas tax. So the public policy is, how do you generate enough money over time fairly from all the drivers, regardless of how many miles per gallon their car happens to have? And we think the pilots is the first step. Actually, this committee hearing is the first step to decide to do a pilot. And then once the pilot is done properly and your DOT has given you a report, you can then have enough information to figure out if and how to implement that pilot, program in the future. Now, I haven't addressed a legislative committee in 38 years. I was chairman of criminal justice at that time in the Florida House of Representatives a year before I became speaker. Before that, I'd been transportation chairman. It's public policy that you have to pursue. What's best for Michigan? And my job at GeoToll is to help anchor, understand exactly the public policy that resonates in the different states, because they're different, and then try to come up with the best solution we can based upon a careful involvement in both pilots when we're allowed to do them, and in the implementation if we get allowed to do it. Our interest is in the development of the technology so that it becomes a standard that will carry you forward over time to a system that everybody pays a fair share and it adequately raises the money you want. We're ready to respond to any questions you have and address those issues going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Representative Wirtz, you had a question for the last speaker. Does it still apply to these guys? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I've met with you. Obviously, I have some ideas here as well regarding this, and I think I have even more after. I was out east last week, and obviously we use Easy Pass. Probably most of us have that in our vehicles when we travel through other states for tolling. I'm wondering if that model is one of these that you mentioned. I guess I don't know what OBD D2 is. Would that be like the Easy Pass?
Honorable Chairman Ortman and Representative Walsh, thank you so much for the question. Now, OBD refers to there is a OBD port in the vehicle. This is like a dongle that you insert, which has a GPS chip in there, and that is particularly utilized for calculation of the mile or computation of the mile. That is just another way of road usage charge mileage reporting. OBD was the first method that came in when the road usage charge was being introduced. It is probably the most expensive, not probably, it is surely the most expensive way of the data collection. I do not recommend utilizing OBD because of the cost associated with OBD, although it comes with the ease of use that the user is able to insert the OBD dongle into the OBD bus, and then the data is coming through the system. However, because of the cost of the hardware device, the cost of the data that you need to ship it to the server, and then you factor in all the hardware becomes bad, just like our phone or television or our computer. You have a 5-year cycle associated with it. So combined together, OBD becomes a very, very expensive device to report the data, and don't advise that. But OBD is just not the same as Easy Pass. It's a mere way of another means of reporting the data for road usage charge purposes.
Okay. My second question comes from a rural agriculture standpoint. So what do we do with tractors, ORVs, ATVs? I'm thinking several of us have, where our counties have, that they can travel on the roadway. Obviously, tractors have to travel on roadways. So is there a so many miles per se until you would necessarily implement? And then my other question to that, is there a maximum? As I said last week, I was out east in New York City, and my niece, if you use your pass so many times on the metro after 12, which equates to $30 a week, you don't have to pay anything additional to that. So would there be a maximum? Could we assess that at monthly? You've spent this much, then no more for you.
So again, Chairman Outman and Representative Walsh, these are the program policies that you will implement after getting the feedback from the residents as part of your pilot program. So number one is how the different vehicles are implemented. So the program has become very, very smart, very, very complicated program over the period of time. You have as soon as you enter, a participant enters a VIN number into the system. The VIN number goes ahead and associates your vehicle with the vehicle class, weight class association. And this weight class is the class that is approved, that these are the weight class of the vehicle that are allowed to participate. So in the beginning, the program is mainly for the consumer light duty vehicle. And then of course, the state can choose to expand the program into the different weight class vehicle and have the different cost associated with those weight class vehicles. Again, these are the program policies which the committee, after studying the pilot data, will implement in coming up with a full program from that perspective. Whether you like to provide some kind of a credit to all your residents, or you want to put up a maximum cap. Some states say that there is going to be a maximum cap. So for example, Utah has implemented a program where you have a program cap. So you can drive, but after you can set up a program cap, let's say at $200. So after $200, nobody is going to be contributing any more towards the road usage charge program. So again, these are the state policies which are dependent upon the state. They are dependent upon the geographic information, your local residents of the state, and those are going to be the decisions that you will be making as a committee members.
And just to follow up, the whole purpose of the pilot is to sort of sort through those choices. And so by doing a pilot, you then get the information back of what might be best suited in the state of Michigan, rural, urban, young, old, pickup trucks, or a Camry. You sort that out as part of a pilot initiative that'll let you make prudent choices based on the facts that are discovered in the pilot.
Representative Kara.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you both for your testimony. I just have a question regarding that 3% transaction fee that people pay at the pump. Do you think makes more sense for that burden to be placed on the gas station or the customer who chooses to use that service?
Thank you so much for your question, Representative Carr. Again, different states implement different policy. I was speaking with the state of Utah just recently, and they changed their road usage charge collection just like I pay my electricity bill. So in that case, if I pay my electricity bill with my credit card, then the utility company charges me a fee on top of that. But if I'm paying that same electricity bill with my ACH account, there is absolutely no fee associated with that. So that would be again a policy that will be developed and proposed by the state committee, that you can say that you have a variety of choices for the payments, but there will be a fee if you are paying with one kind of a transaction fee, which is adding some kind of a burden onto the state data collection. Of course, that is going to be your choice to pass on that fee to the consumer or make it a part of the program fee. But usually, this is most likely to become like a utility bill. My recommendation would be to connect it to an ACH, give the consumers a choice. If it is paid by the ACH, there is a very, very low cost of collection associated with it, which is going to be 0.25 in a kind of a volume %, and that fee can be completely ignored from that perspective.
Okay, thank you. It seems odd to me to burden the gas station or any retailer with the fees for a service that a customer chooses to use, and it manipulates and coerces society into using their credit card service. But just thought I'd throw that out there. Thank you.
All right, we have one last question. Representative Kuhn.
Mr. Chair, sir, real quick, my question's the same. The cost of collection. Can you break down? You listed 4. I understand we're not going with the OBD. What's the cost of collection?
The cost of collection depends upon your program policies. The program policies will allow you to, so I gave a very quick example of ACH versus the credit card. If you're going with the credit card, you are adding a 3% burden on your cost of collection. But if you say that consumers have the first choice as ACH, you are right off the bat, you are reducing 3% cost. Similarly, you can choose a very, very simple technology such as a odometer capture mobile application. And if you choose that kind of technology, now what you're doing is basically you have taken out GPS completely out of the picture.
So what's the cost for the odometer collection?
Odometer collection, again, it will depend upon the number of participants you have. The cost will go down based on the number of participants as you increase in the program. The cost of collection can certainly come down.
We're not communicating well. Right now in Oregon, you said you have a road usage charge. What is the cost of collection in Oregon?
So cost of the collection for my odometer capture mobile app is usually about $1 per person per reporting period from that perspective.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Dr. Agarwar, Mr. Gustafson, thank you so much for your presentation. We really enjoyed it, and look forward to hearing from you soon. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Finally, up today is a presentation from Ed Noyola and Denise Donahue. If you guys want to make your way up. And you guys can begin whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Again, my name is Ed Noyola. I'm the Chief Deputy at the County Road Association, and with me today is Denise Donahue, our CEO. We had another guest that we were hoping to bring, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute here. But Denise and I have been looking at alternative methods for funding our road systems for about 3 years. We've been to DC several times to go to the National Michigan User-Based Foundation Alliance. We've been there and we've had good conversations. We've met a lot of people. We've talked to a lot of people. And I can tell you right off the bat, just for clarity, This is about education. This is about educating the people of Michigan, the legislators, on how and what options are available. That is part of the pilot program that they were mentioning earlier. When you talk about the pilot, you're talking about a advisory committee who's going to look at what are some of the options that we have available to us and what would best fit Michigan. Let me go on to the PowerPoint presentation right now. Ruck, what do you need to know? We're losing revenue right now as we speak because of electric vehicles, hybrids, the plug-ins, the under-the-hood self-charging ones, and the efficiency vehicles, which was mentioned earlier. What is the solution? Studies? Everybody's done a study. If we need a study, we can pull somebody's study to look at it. What we need to do is begin a pilot program to look at what is the best options for Michiganders to use. And regardless whether you use MBUF or RUC or VMTs, it's all the same. Don't let that confuse you. What the important part you need to know, and this is what we need to do right now, is to increase the road funding now. That is to set the flat transparency of RUC and MBUF over time. Once we decide how much revenue we're going to start collecting, additional revenue, then we can start talking about what would the RUC fee be. If you go to the challenges, you look at this chart. This is something we've provided you in the past. It looks at what have we done with the new revenue that we've been collecting since 2015. We generally look at this from an engineering planning point of view of how many miles should we be working on. They're saying we should be working on 15% of our system every year. Right now, if you look at the blue and you look at the lime green line, we're not halfway there. We're barely halfway there. So we've been trying to make progress, and we've been making some progress. But at this point in time, with the revenue that's being collected, we are going to start seeing a flat or maybe even a decrease in the amount of miles that we are working on. Again, why can't we get ahead? Well, if you look at this chart, and this is the federal fuel tax revenue per mile driven chart, you can see it's not looking very good. And Michigan is pretty much running parallel to what the chart shows you right here. Why? Because of the CAFE standards that were created earlier, that were started earlier in a couple decades ago. That was part of the issue, but now it's just competition. Everybody wants to be more fuel efficient, so the manufacturers are doing their part to be more fuel efficient and be more competitive. So that's another reason why the revenue is going down. We have about a 100-year-old road funding model being undermined by fuel efficiencies. New model needed tax. We need a gas tax that is fair, but we've got this declining efficiency issue. Road funding burden has shifted to older, heavier rural drivers in Michigan and across the U.S. This is going to continue when you look at the average 21 miles per gallon in 2010 to projected 32 miles per gallon in 2030. That is a given. And again, let's not forget the EVs. They are going to reduce the gas tax by 25% by 2030. That's a projection. Gas tax consumption declining sources in Michigan road funding will continue. This chart, which is provided to us with the information from the Senate Fiscal Agency, if you take out the 2001 and the 2020 out of the scale here, you'll notice that we have been slowly but quickly but persistently decreasing in consumption. That's a problem that we have and we will continue to have as we become more efficient. And let me throw in this concept too, is that as we transition our old vehicles, your kids are getting out of their car, you're giving them your car. So you're buying a more efficient car. So even the older vehicles are more fuel efficient than what you had, your 1990 or your 1980 vehicle. So it's only going to precipitate and continue to grow as we transition out of those older model, heavier vehicles. Here's our revenue from the gas tax chart. This is provided, the information, the data that we got was provided by the House Fiscal Agency. So you can see in 2018, that was the year that we were fully implemented into the 2015 fuel tax package, that created that high watermark. Obviously, 2020 is that COVID year, that down spike there. And the reason, partially, if not mostly, the reason we're going up and keeping our nose above the waterline is because of indexing. In 2015, we were smart enough and clever enough to make sure that we had indexing on fuel. And that's what's probably helping us keep that level of growth in the fuel tax revenue being collected. And if you look at the last 5 years, over on the right-hand side, the right-hand column, you'll see that we've grown only 1% over the past 5 years, even with the indexing. So overall, we're in a bad situation, and we need to start looking and start thinking about what is a next generation funding system.
So Ed just talked about the fuel efficiency and specifically how that's affecting our MTF, our largest source of funding for county roads. Just a word about the headwinds that we're facing from EVs. They're still in their infancy, whether it's a full-on battery, a hybrid electric vehicle. This is a study that we, with some of our association peers, funded with the Anderson Economic Group. Probably seen it before, but by 2030, there will be $90 million a year that doesn't show up into the MTF. Cumulative underpayment by that point could be as much as $470 million, or to put it in terms, enough to not pave a county road from Tequamanon Falls to the city of Monroe. Both ways, both directions, every year will not get done if we don't consider proper collection, I guess, from our electric vehicle owners. So next slide. This is just breaking it down per type of car. Your far left column is an ICE, an internal combustion engine. When you remove the pink is federal gas tax. When you remove that internal combustion engine, on average, 14,000 miles in Michigan, is paying $302 per year to the roads. The second column there is a full-on battery-powered vehicle, $298 a year to the road. So pretty comparable, those two. Third column is your plug-in hybrid. When we take off the pink bar, they're looking at contributing $237 to roads per year, $65 less than your typical ICE combustion vehicle at 14,000. After 14,000 miles, they're driving completely free. The fourth column there is the hybrid recharge under your hood. This is the one that comprises about 80% of the electric vehicles in Michigan. Again, not considering the federal tax, they're contributing $215 a year to the roads, $87 less than an ICE vehicle. So this is some data from Michigan. We've already heard this about the rural driver. Ed and I have been talking about this for 2 or 3 years to anybody that will listen, including all of our road commissioners, who are really a microcosm of the world. And we do get, I would say, north of Clare, just to pick an arbitrary line, people are very concerned that it is going to harm the rural commuter trying to get to their jobs. And you know, that is how you think of it at first. They certainly drive more miles, but it has already been demonstrated by one, at least Baruch and his presentation. The MBUF or the RUC is mileage-based. It's the use of the road. It is agnostic about what type of car that you're driving. And I think that's the part we really need a lot of education. We do need, as you look at a pilot program, we're going to need some focus groups. People think very differently from our presentations from Southeast Michigan, Southwest Michigan, Upper Peninsula, Northern Michigan, very, very different thoughts, and those need to be gathered really before we embark on any kind of pilot. So I guess we've already talked about it's not an additional fee, complete transition over time, privacy matters, choices, we've talked about all that. This is just simply a second data set for you to peruse from Utah, again showing how the 15 mile per gallon pickup, which is our rural, it's our loggers, it's our farmers, others driving a pickup, is shouldering more and more of the burden of funding roads. That's happening right now in Michigan and every other state, and so it's something to take into account.
This is going to be an example of what a program could look like. And first of all, you have to provide, the vehicle would have to provide the data. The data would go to an account manager. That could be a state agency, that could be an independent third party, but regardless, that's where the information goes. Once they receive that information, it is sent, an invoice is sent to the motorist. The motorist makes the payment to the account manager. The account manager transfers that MBUF transfer over to the state agency, where I think that would probably be Treasury, and then Treasury would do some oversight. So you can see that's a full, simple scheme here, but this is something as a starting point when you provide the advisory committee to the pilot. They can look at this and saying, what is the best way? What is the best way to collect the information? And I'll get to that in just a second here. So that information collection, we looked at the plug-in devices, and we're probably saying that's not really a good feasible way because of cost, or what was the other reason, Denise? I think it's a cost. Accuracy is a problem with that. There's also using the in-vehicle telematics. You could use your cell phone. Straight on odometer reading, reporting, and then there's the flat fee. You could pay up front. I want to pay for 30,000 miles up front, and I don't want to mess with reporting. That is always going to be an option, always should be an option. And again, this is an option thing. What Denise and I have discovered through our through our trip here, through our user-based fees, is best practices approach. Increasing road funding now, flat transition to RUC over 7 to 10 years. This is not an overnight thing. This is going to take some time to get everybody into it. But as we go through this, you will not be paying fuel tax, you'll be paying a mileage fee. So there's no double dipping here. So at the end of the 10-year, 7 to 10 year period, everybody is on a mileage-based user fee structure in one way, shape, or form. So, in other words, we need to start looking at that $3 billion road funding need now. Gas tax revenue will continue to decline. Second, pilot program for the RUC should begin now. RUC fees, charges, webpage, 5 regional focus groups, etc., something to that effect. Denise and I are talking out of the box here. We know that, but we've got to start somewhere, and we feel like we've got a pretty good grip on this, and we would like to be part of that. The next thing was the EV. Most pilot transitions to full implementation. Let's start with the EVs and the hybrids first, go to the ICE vehicles next, and then continue on until we have full implementation. This approach is transparency to the public. There is a website in California, believe it or not, that actually allows the public to go in and try to figure out what am I paying now and what would I pay under the scenario of a mileage-based user fee. I went on the website, swear to God I did, and I looked at it, and it's very simple. You put in your information about your vehicle, and if you know what kind of mileage you get, it'll tell you, or it will look it up for you. But once you get in there, you can discover what are you paying now per gallon, and what would you pay per penny, or whatever the mileage fee would be. So that was a really unique idea, and I think our association wants to move forward with something like that and put it on our website. I don't know what you guys feel about it, but I think that would be another education tool to get the public used to the concept and used to what is it going to cost me. Am I going to benefit, or am I going to lose, or am I going to be even Steven? But first of all, we've got to get that additional revenue put into the program. Last but not least, we do have a national person coming in to speak to our members at the Mackinac Room here on the 5th floor. We will be hosting a hot lunch for legislators. If you're interested, we invite you to come down around 10:30. This is Nate Beyer. He's the Senior Director for the Road User Charging Mobility Operations at a WSP. He is also an appointee to the federal system funding. I can't read this right now, but he's on the national board. So he can probably answer some of the questions you all had about what are the feds up to. We're excited to have him here. He's going to be doing a PowerPoint presentation tomorrow, again, around 10:30. If you're interested, please come on down and listen to him and have a hot lunch on us.
Excellent. You had me at lunch. We have a question from Representative Wirtz.
Yeah, thank you. So just again, curious to know if you know, and looking at the other states. So again, back to agriculture. I mean, I drove a skid steer 1.5 miles over the weekend. Am I going to have to pay for that? Is there going to be something assessed in every one of our tractors or pieces of equipment when we go on the road?
I don't know why I gave him the mic. I am not an expert on this, other than, I mean, the agricultural fuel, if you're using dyed fuel, isn't paying now, right?
So is that, and so would they be exempt? Is
I
that?
mean, that's up to you guys, but I would think that
How do
portion would
I guess
go
how
forward.
are other states doing that? Or and additionally, then, like again, we've looked at our county's implemented an ORV ordinance. They're now looking at also implementing a golf cart ordinance. So
It's
what are states
exactly
doing?
what the previous speakers were saying. This is a policy issue that you guys will have to look at, because most of what you're asking is already on the books. How do we charge, and at what weight classes are they in? So if we can look at that for a sample to try to figure out when do we start rolling in these commercial vehicles or these recreational vehicles, whatever they may be. That's what the pilot is going to fare out once we get it assembled.
And have other states? I guess back to what you said. They've started with the EVs or the hybrids.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, they do have a voluntary program. Some of them have voluntary programs for ICE vehicles to come and be part of the pilot program. And I think a lot of them would appreciate having some ICE vehicle participation for sure.
Yeah, actually, a really excellent question, Representative. The agriculture, the farm vehicles, that's not nearly as big of a concern to me. We'll certainly exempt them from the various taxes, but that is a great question in terms of recreational vehicles. Are we going to track every single quad and dirt bike out there? Right now we're gathering that revenue from the gas tax.
They're getting whatever they purchase. They're getting that money back from that 2%. Off the top of all the gasoline tax that's collected, 2% goes into the recreation fund, and that's divvied up between the ORV account, the marina account, and the snowmobile account. So they're getting their money back. So I don't know how much of a problem that would be for them, but it could be.
Right, but will we be losing out on that revenue in terms of them using the roadways, or at least purchasing the fuel?
Yeah, that would be something that we would need to consider during this pilot program.
Has anybody? That's actually a new concern for me. Has anybody discussed that to your knowledge?
No, nobody's brought that up.
Interesting. Okay.
Not even in the other states.
Yeah. Well, again, excellent question, Representative. Do we have any other questions from the members? No? Well, just one last question. It's general in nature and almost rhetorical in nature as well, but give us the consequences of not acting and not, increasing revenue to our road system. I know, Denise, I know you touched on a specific example in terms of Monroe to, I think it was Tequamanon Falls, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But just any last parting words that you want to relay to the public out there, just how dire the situation is in terms of road funding? And
well, again, I mean, we are very appreciative. We do think that the legislature is headed down the right road. We think the $3 billion, road funding package now shores things up. But as Ed likes to say, he tries to walk and chew gum at the same time. Can we start, a RUC pilot and begin to move in a futuristic direction? Because there's no question that gas tax is state MTF is the number one source of funding for any county road agency, and gas tax is a 41% contributor to that. And if that's going to erode under our feet, that's just why we can't make progress and improve more miles of roads.
how much does the registration fees, how much does that contribute to our Michigan Transportation Fund?
It's the other 41%.
Okay.
They're real equitable.
Yep.
Most of the revenue comes from the income tax transfer and the marijuana tax.
Okay. And I'm more of a user-based guy just in general. I think it just makes sense. The more you drive, the more you pay. So, that's why I'm somewhat open to the VMT method of taxation. But I really, really appreciate you guys coming in here and educating us on this. And Ed, looks like you have another.
Just one comment on the electric vehicles and the hybrids. They're paying a surcharge in their registration fee, but that surcharge is equivalent to the average driven miles by passenger vehicles. So if they go over that passenger average, they're driving for free, while you and I with combustible engine vehicles are still paying as we go.
Yeah, it certainly does look like a parity issue there in terms of, traditional ICE vehicles in comparison to hybrids and electric. So certainly would like to address that in the future as well. But again, thank you both for being here to present. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
And with that, Representative Kuhn moves to excuse absent members. There being no objection, the motion prevails. There being no further business before the committee stands adjourned.